Welcome everybody to our House of Labor panel. We've got 4 labor organizers on the panel with us, and we're going to be talking about kind of issues going on in the labor movement right now, and specifically talking about something that I personally love to talk about, which is the rank and file strategy. So first I'd love to just kind of go on down the line and have everybody introduce yourself with your name, your pronouns, where you live, your union, and just briefly, what is the political climate in your industry right now? So let's start with Josh and kind of come this way. Yep.
All right, can you hear me? All right, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Josh Armstead, he, him pronouns. I'm with Unite Here Local 23. It's the Food Service and Hospitality Workers Union. So if you're staying at a hotel, most than likely, my union is representing, you know, those workers. So give yourselves a round of applause. And remember to tip, right? Tip your housekeeper. The political climate, right, in this industry is food service. So very briefly, let's think about the history of like food service and hospitality workers, primarily dominated by Black and brown folks who, you know, were not considered for various reasons that, you know, most people in this room hopefully know, right? Like full-fledged people, right? Even the concept of tipping, right? Like was something that was started to not pay Black workers specifically a full day's wage. And so the political climate in my industry, in food service and hospitality, is one where these often considered low-skill workers, but in truth, you know, the workers that make an operation run for leisure, entertainment, and hospitality are vital, right? And it's a matter of gaining not just the money from the boss, but understanding that it's a matter of respect and understanding that these jobs that people consider throwaway jobs, or this is a job when you're a teenager, these are good jobs. Like, everybody wants to go out to eat, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants a hotel to stay in, right? Right, so that means that you gotta pay people, right? That means you gotta treat people with respect, right? And so that's the basic things that my industry is really fighting for and will continue to fight for in the near future.
Thanks, Josh. Go ahead, Chris.
My name is Chris Viola, he, him. I work in Detroit, Michigan. I'm an auto worker for General Motors. My local is 22. I got hired in 2006. Politically, in the auto industry, the big 3 have been a force in Michigan and Detroit for ever, and outside Detroit too, Lansing.
Chris, can I jargon giraffe you real quick?
Oh,
what is the big 3?
I'm sorry, big 3, yes. I even pointed out, is this a relevant word for people outside of Michigan earlier, so thank you for checking me on that. So big 3, auto, is General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis, formerly FCA, and before that, Chrysler. We'll often just call them Chrysler because Stellantis is a weird word to use, and we always forget, and old habits die hard. Anyway, politically, I will say that we've been losing a lot of production jobs. Bad trade deals such as NAFTA have moved a lot of jobs down south to Mexico and other countries, Canada even. My own sister, she worked for American Axle, which was a company that was bought. They bought the plant from General Motors and eventually shut that down. So we have this big empty field where that factory used to be, and it happens a lot. And the big 3, as I said, They get a lot of money from the government. There's a lot of money going in from federal funds, state funds, local funds. Marshall, Michigan got money from both the town of Marshall, Ford got money from both Marshall, Michigan and probably the country to build new battery plants and so forth. So the EV transition is like the biggest problem currently. I mean, I drive an electric vehicle. I like electric vehicles. We build them. They're not the only thing that's going to solve climate change, I know that. But One major issue is that these new jobs pay less than when I was hired in 17 years ago. And that was life-changing money for me back then. And I cannot imagine like anyone moving out of their parents' house, paying off debt, and being able to save for retirement or anything like that, or even buying a vehicle that you actually produce in an area in which you almost completely need a vehicle in order to make it around town and get to work and all that. So yeah, that's the biggest thing we're fighting right now is real jobs that are paying people well enough. These used to be jobs that would, you can send your kids to college on, and they're not that way anymore. So
right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Rafa, you are also a UAW person, but in a very different corner of UAW. Can you, whichever one.
Oh, my bad.
You're all good. Hey everyone, my name is Rafael, you see him pronouns. I'm a graduate student worker at the University of California, Los Angeles, where I also live. And I'm also the president of UAW 2865, which is the union of 36,000 academic workers at the University of California system. As far as like the climate, political climate at the University of California, the University of California, for a long time, academic workers have really struggled to make ends meet in academia. Over the years, we've seen rapid decline in funding for public education. And what we've seen is a rise in the exploitation of academic workers. But until recently, many of these academic workers weren't even recognized as workers. And so they were very easily exploited. Many of them themselves didn't see themselves as academic workers. And so what we've seen over the last few years as the last decades as conditions deteriorate in the university, less funding, more exploitation, is a real awakening of workers, academic workers as a class. And I think we are really seeing right now the making of the academic working class across the entire United States. We've seen, higher ed is right now is at the forefront of the militant organizing across the country with these massive organizing campaigns across the entire nation. And just this past fall, my union and our sibling union, UAW 5810, and I know there are some members here in the audience, led the largest and most militant strike of 2022. And there were involving 48,000 workers across the University of California system to fight for higher pay, but also just more equitable working conditions. In academia, I don't know how many of you know this, but the rate of sexual harassment and discrimination in academia is second highest only to the military. So, just let that sink in. Second highest only to the military. And this leads to just so many workers, promising scholars, scientists, pushed out of academia because of the conditions that they face. And so our fight last fall was, yes, about higher wages, but also about creating the conditions so that anybody can come to the University of California and thrive and succeed. And for that, we fought for things such as protections against harassment and discrimination, the first industry kind protections against bullying, and also paid parental leave up to 8 weeks for parents and caregivers. And this has led to making the University of California a much more equitable, accessible, and democratic workplace.
Thank you. And Abby, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Abby. I use she, they pronouns. I'm a special education teacher and a member of the Chicago Teachers Union.
Woo.
I'm not going to give the entire history of the strike movement in teachers' unions. You can probably read an Eric Blanc book about that. But I will say, we are coming off of the Red for Ed movement, which was really between 2016 to 2019, where we saw mass strikes among teachers across the United States. I think, incredibly, the West Virginia teachers strike. I remember the first DSA convention I went to, we had just come off of that, and that was a life-changing strike that changed the lives of teachers across West Virginia, and it also moved the needle on what teachers can do. And obviously a lot of that inspiration comes from Chicago Teachers Union. We're the striking union. Last summer I went to the AFT National Convention with my union, and some more conservative ends of our union locals were coming up to me and saying, "Stop making my members want to strike." But we can talk about the strikes, and we can talk about the things that teachers did to fight for COVID relief for our school districts, right? Teachers here in Chicago taught during a snowstorm outside because they were forcing teachers and school clerks and techos, the people that run the technology for our schools, back into the building before the vaccines were available. It was targeted at our most vulnerable students. I was teaching in an autism classroom where they were forcing the autistic children back in the classroom, but none of their peers, and this was under Lori Lightfoot. But I also want to talk about what's happening now. I think there's one thing that the Red for Ed movement taught us, and it's that our teaching conditions are our students' learning conditions. And so right now, teachers across the United States are facing massive fascist right-wing attacks for teaching basic history and teaching acceptance in the classroom, and actually just having an accepting classroom generally, right? There's fascist groups like Moms for Liberty that are running campaigns to get individual teachers fired. And one thing that I'd like to, really make sure when we think about these fascist attacks on teachers is that these are happening in states where teachers don't have the right to collectively bargain. And so we need to think, and this is just my opinion, but we need to think about our lessons from the West Virginia teacher strike, from the strikes that happen in states where teachers haven't been able to hold the most power, but then in solidarity, teachers in these states like Illinois, Chicago teachers, right, need to use our solidarity to support them, right? There's so much I can say. We're public sector workers. We face, I feel like, all the issues of society in a tiny way in our classrooms every single day. And so, that's a political situation.
Yeah, Abby, while you have the mic, I just wanted to kind of follow up with you about, you were a labor organizer, you decided to go back to school and retrain and become a public school teacher, and then pretty quickly into your career as a public school teacher, you had to use those organizing skills to protect yourself and your students. Can you just speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I guess to keep it going, so there was actually two pretty big things. So I started, am I close enough? Hello, can you hear me? All right, cool. So I got into my teaching program on March 14th, 2020, if that date rings a bell for any of you. It was really cool. So as I said, me and my students, because as a special education teacher, were forced in the classroom way earlier than everyone else. Then in 2021, 2022 school year, that was the full year of first full year of COVID teaching, right? In December of 2021, we had exploding COVID rates in the city of Chicago. We had only 3 classrooms at the school I was at the time. Only 3 classrooms were not quarantined. And this is a pre-K through 8th grade school. So it's a pretty big school. Only 3 were not quarantined. And unfortunately, one of my coworkers passed away from COVID. And we were lied to about it. Then Lori Lightfoot got on TV and said that we were sitting from the sidelines and making a big deal for political points when it was her coworker that died of COVID, right? Someone that we all knew very well. And my coworkers and I decided we didn't strike, we just taught from home, right? We said this is not safe for our students, this is not safe for us, and we decided to teach from home. And that was in December 2021. We got back and were locked out by Lori Lightfoot right after, which was a really awesome move because teachers were saying the same thing. It's not safe. But I think the big thing that Sarah wants me to talk about, and this is, I'm kind of sad because I think there's a Green New Deal panel going on right now. But the state of our schools in this country are miserable. The physical state of our schools are falling apart in this country. The city of Chicago has some of the oldest school buildings in the United States of America, I think second to Philly and Boston. We have ancient school buildings. The school that I'm currently at, I love it, but it is the third oldest school in the entire city. It was built in 1881, right after the Chicago fire. And yeah, it's an ancient building. And last fall, I started to notice some peeling paint in my classroom. It was a little bit coming from the ceiling, and then the next day there was more. The next day there was more and more and more until there were sheets of paint falling off my ceiling. And I immediately told my school engineer. He was like, all right. He started the process for them to check on it. Chicago Public Schools sent in someone kind of high up to look at it, and the guy was like, oh no, it's not lead. You shouldn't be worried. It's not lead. You shouldn't be worried. There's no mercury in it. There's no asbestos, you're fine. And then it got worse, the guy came in again. And he said, no, it's totally fine. And at this point, everything in my room was covered in dust. It was disgusting. Every morning I would have to spend 30 minutes sweeping. And then third time he came in, he said, no, you're fine. We just need to make sure we clean it up in the morning. And that's something clicked. I was having conversations with my coworkers about it. I was bringing them into my classroom just to show them, because I was being gaslit, to use terms, right? I was being gaslit by the school district when my gut was telling me something was wrong. And from a few conversations with my coworkers, it was literally a question of, if I bring in lead tests, will you back me up? And they are all like, absolutely. Absolutely. So we tested lead paint. It wasn't just my classroom. We tested lead paint across our school, and the tests, they turned red. They were firing up red. It was widespread lead paint across our school. We ended up having a union meeting, and I'm thankful for being a member of the CTU, because I was able to call the vice president of our union, and we had a union meeting scheduled within hours. It was so successful. It was a joint union meeting. We had members of CTU, SEIU, Unite here, our kitchen staff are Unite here, and the operating engineers union at this union meeting. It was such an intense union meeting that the CEO of Chicago Public Schools called my principal and accused her of organizing it. But we brought light to this issue. We put it in the news, and then started through the CTU, through the Environmental Justice Committee of the CTU, we started distributing lead tests, and they found lead at even more schools. If it didn't take a quick conversation with my coworkers of, will you back me up if I do this? And if we hadn't have gotten in the media, they put over $750,000, I think it was $750K into my school alone. And if I had to spend millions of more dollars to remediate across the school district, nothing would have happened. And so I think that's
that's the power.
lot.
That's the power of organizers in the rank and file. Exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Josh, I know you kind of did the opposite, where you were a rank and file worker that then kind of became part of union staff. Is your history as being kind of on the shop floor, does that inform like how you organize in your union?
Yeah, it actually does, right? So the comrade who just told her story is actually very similar to mine. I grew up poor in Washington, D.C., so I saw my mother, really go through, the bullshit. Can I curse here?
Yeah.
The bullshit of like, you do everything you're supposed to do, you get your checks, you spend it, you pay bills, you try to take care of your family, and in the end you have nothing. You go through the same cycle over and over and over. So when I was in the rank and file, I was employed at Georgetown University for Aramark, right? And I started as a dishwasher, and I made like maybe $11.60 an hour. My mom was making 10, right? Then one day, this is very Cliff Notes version, but one day a worker from another university about 2 miles up the road from Georgetown told me that dishwashers were, they were making 15, 16, 17 an hour. Same company, even the same union, but they had been union for years. We had just won the union apparently in 2011. This is now 2013. And he told me, if you want the same rights and the same benefits that my coworkers have at AU, you have to actually do the same things that we did, which was join the organizing committee and, really fight. And going back to what you were saying, it's really talking to your coworkers. Will you stand with me? I didn't understand what that meant at the time, but, it really cemented when I came into bargaining And there's this dude, he's, for any of the black folk out there, skin folk, right? He's the same color as me. He has 3 silver rings on one hand, 3 gold rings on the other, a gold Rolex. He looks me and the rest of the committee in the eye and he says, "We are a $14 billion company. We will not be intimidated by our workers. The most that we can give you is 10 cents. 10 cents. This is the part earlier in the introduction where I'm like, I say this with tender and care, right? Auto worker, graduate student, teacher, right? Like, there's shit that's hard for y'all, right? But like in food service, we don't even get the basic respect. Like, you're considered old style tradition. You're at least considered like a student, like, oh, the new upcoming future. You're like in CTU, like they somewhat fear y'all. Food service workers, hospitality workers, we have to go in fighting. And that's what we did at Georgetown, right? Like, we realized there was 150 unorganized workers. And each time we did actions on the shop floor, delegations, power, doing house visits, something that pushed the company to where they couldn't take it because they don't see this from food service workers often, the company moved. 10 cents became 25 cents. 25 cents then became 50 cents. 50 cents became $1. No health insurance became health insurance. No pension became a pension, et cetera, et cetera. And so until eventually we, got what we wanted from the company at the time. Now, that's just bargaining. Anyone here knows that it's not just the contract that you win or renegotiate. It's also what you do on the shop floor. So I immediately became a shop steward, memorized my contract, and it goes back again to, will you stand with me when you talk to your coworkers? It's funny that she mentioned falling ceilings. As a dishwasher, I had, how do I put this? So like, there's supposed to be like 5, maybe 6 people in a dish room, and it's hard work, right? Like, if you go out to eat, you can have the best cook, you can have the best cutlery, but if you don't have a clean pot, you don't have anything. And so above us where we were working, the ceiling was leaking. And it would get on your uniform and it would smell like caca, right? It would smell bad. It would smell like sewage. And then the ceiling started to have water prolapses until it started to fall down. So we go to the company. I went to the company as a steward by myself. And it was like, hey, when are you gonna fix this? Oh, this is a Georgetown problem. They have to fix it. And it's like, you can't accept that type of answer when literally you're getting, excuse my language again, shitted on, right? Like, you have to literally do something. So I go to my coworkers and I'm like, look, will you stand with me? Get a petition ready. Get signatures done. And then we do a delegation. It scared the crap out of the company so much that the manager ran into the dish room, shut down the dish room. We switched from ceramic plates to paper plates, and the company ended up spending $40,000 of their own money to fix that dish room. And once you see that type of power, in my shop, I would do delegations over anything. If there were workers that didn't have proper translations, that's a delegation. If there were workers that felt that their vacation rights were being changed unilaterally, that was a delegation, right? Massing people together is the only way that, not just for my industry, but every industry, that workers get respect. It's the whole power of the union. And once you understand that, right, I sometimes miss it. I'm now the vice president and I'm a staff organizer in Unite here, but I swear to God, I miss being the shop steward. I miss being the shop floor militant. How many shop stewards out here? Raise your hand.
Any shop stewards in the audience?
Any shop stewards?
Nice.
Treasure
Doing
the
Lord's
shop
work.
stewards, right? Be militant, be dynamic, because the union has to not just be one of service, it has to be one of militant organizing. And part of that militant organizing also means, hey, we need to terrify the boss because otherwise they're not going to give us what we want.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's great. Chris, I feel like there's been a huge rank and file upswell within UAW in the past few years. Can you kind of speak to what's been going on there and the effect that has had then on the leadership of UAW?
Yeah, so in 2018, I believe 2017 when it started, there were a very long line of issues. It turns out a lot of people were embezzling money from both corporate and and from the union itself through various different methods. And that was kind of the backdrop of our strike in 2019. We went on strike in 2019. There was no lead up to that. There was no contract campaigns like you've seen with the Teamsters, even though we all were pretty sure that we were going to go on strike. And I remember seeing, people on the line not really knowing exactly, at least in the first few days. Like I wasn't on a strike line immediately. I was actually on vacation because I had been on strike in the past and it was over in a day. So I was like, yeah, it's never going to happen. We were never going to do it. Well, it happened because GM was the aggressor in that they wanted to take our health care. They wanted to reduce it, and they ended up taking our health care within a couple of days. And anyway, during that entire strike, I saw signs that were saying, solidarity forever, everyone tier 1. And I'm like, oh, we're finally doing it. We're finally going to fight against these tiers. Since I got hired in, people who were hired in after me started making about $4 or $5 an hour less. And it was never getting better. They just kept adding tiers. And we were just getting so entirely frustrated. So even though our issues were with previous leadership, with the embezzlement, the other corruption, taking bribes, all that, really we've just been getting bad deals for decades, in my opinion. When I was hired in 2007, I could not believe that they were going to hire somebody the next day and pay them $11 an hour, or $14 an hour, whatever it was. It was way lower. It was life-changing money for me, and I really thought we were going to do something with it. The public was with us after GM took our health care. There was a story that someone went down for surgery and then came up, and then they had no more. They had no health insurance whatsoever. I cannot imagine that. And public outcry was there, and I'm very thankful for that. But I don't think we capitalized on it, and I just racked my brain as to what do we do? I had never been particularly involved in my union. Again, I was pretty jaded from out the gate. 2007, I'm like, okay, apparently unions are not what I thought they were if you're actually paying different people less money. And that's when I got involved. I found out there were people that were attempting to bring something out of our Constitution, in which we would call for a special convention and have one member, one vote. Not every union has this, very few actually do. Teamsters do, as an example, but we would normally have a convention where the delegates would vote on candidates, and it would basically be a very high percentage for the candidates that were brought from the previous administration, or they might be the same ones. And I thought that was weird, and I vote for presidents, I vote for I vote for governor, I vote for mayor. It seemed like I think people around me are smart enough to actually be able to vote, and we started pushing for that, the ability to vote for our highest leadership. And we won it that year. It went 2-1 actually, even though when I brought it up at my local, nobody wanted anything to do with it except for the people that were on the floor. That's when I realized, okay, I got a bit more in common. Obviously, I have more in common with people on the floor because that's where I'm from. And something about leadership just, never gelled with me, I'll say. But that told me that they were definitely out of step with the rank and file. And I continued working with them, UAWD, and worked to elect our brand new leadership, including our president, Sean Fain, who makes Jim Cramer's head explode, which I love so much. It really feels like Chris Matthews worrying that Bernie's going to murder him in cold blood in front of everyone when Bernie won Nevada in 2020, which was the last time I felt like political hope in a while. So that felt amazing, and I'm very thankful that I've been a part of it. And I don't really have an elected position. I have a committee that I'm a chair of that I'm the only member of. Nobody knows what it does except for me. I've helped a lot of people with it. But really being a rank and file person, as the examples that have been given, like helping, sticking out, knowing your contract, knowing your rights. You know, I was just thinking, like, I remember when we had an issue with the gas fill machine. You know, we have to put like a gallon of gas in every car when we were making, you know, ICE vehicles, cars with engines. And, you know, we had safety come out and we weren't getting satisfaction. They were bringing their instruments out and they were saying, well, it's apparently safe. Well, some people started feeling woozy, so they went to, they put in a committee call and they said, I'm feeling sick, I gotta go to medical. This is in our contract, this is something you can do. There's a whole process. And everyone did it. And this is the first time I've really seen like what everyone sticking together does, because eventually you get enough people going to medical, and everyone did, or damn near everyone did, including myself at the end. That line does not run. And I went because at that time, you know, I tried being a tough guy, and at one point I started feeling drunk. And I'm like, this, I cannot, no, absolutely not. And I realized in that moment, like, I gotta know how to take care of everybody around me. I gotta know stuff like this so that we can stand up and fight and actually do something. And nobody's here to save us, we're here to save each other. And that was my experience. That was my real first experience with the strength of being a rank and file worker.
Yeah, I feel like a good mantra for the whole union movement. We're here to save each other. Rafael, you are kind of in a different corner of UAW. What effect do you feel like the influx of grad students into the UAW has had, and what effect do you think it'll have on the future fights that we have coming up?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it might be helpful to start a little bit before, but so when I actually arrived at the University of California in 2016, which, yeah, it's a long time ago, but the union was in a very different spot. When I came to the University of California, I had my union orientation. It was a very disorganized affair. And I tried to sign my union card, I remember that. But because it was very, very poorly organized, the person giving the orientation had to cut it early, left before I could give him my card. And then despite my many attempts to return that card, it took me about a year to finally be able to sign up as a union member. And that was because there really was no union at the University of California. UAW 2065, despite being founded and started in 2000, by 2016, it had gone through many declines. In 2016, we had about a 36% membership across the entire union. And this was right before Janus. And if anybody knows, Janus was the Supreme Court decision which decimated public sector unions, made it so that all public sector unions were basically open shops. And because our union had very little, did not have an organizing program, it was just self-selectors. There was actually no union, and we had very little power. And so coming into 2018, that was our last contract negotiations, we didn't have the power to go on strike. And we ended up having to settle a contract which had decent wins, but it was far from what we actually needed and what we wanted to fight for. And that's when I started getting involved in our union. In the transformation that has gone, thanks to many amazing leaders that came before me, we went from 36% membership in 2016 to supermajority membership in this last round of negotiations, and to leading the largest strike in the history of higher education, involving 48,000 workers across 11 campuses across the entire state of California and 2 unions. And that happened because a new crop of leaders came in around 2017, committed to organizing across all types of workers across the University of California, committed to identifying, recruiting, and developing rank and file leaders to take ownership of their union. We had a program where we recruited organizers across all departments, whether it was humanities, social sciences, or STEM. And we did that. We had to organize leaders and go into STEM, which historically had very low union membership, because we knew that the only way they were going to have a successful strike in 2022 was if we had industrial power. And that meant being able to go on strike and shut down teaching and research. So all the teaching assistants, all the student researchers, and all the postdocs and academic researchers all on strike together. And that's how we could shut down the research that brings in billions of dollars to the University of California and the instruction. And this was a multi-year plan, 4 years. It was a 4-year plan to actually do this. And this was all successful because I think all the people who came in, many of them socialists themselves, but many of them not, were committed to this movement, worker-led movement, to bring about real transformational change at the University of California. And I think this lesson is really important because in order for us to transform our unions, whether it's the UAW, Teamsters, et cetera, all these unions, the real way to do it, I think it needs to be bottom up. Imagine there are 20,000 new workers in the UAW, 20,000 who have gone through one of the most brutal fights with the University of California, who know how to organize, who are militant, whose politics have been totally shifted through this strike. That are now part of the UAW. That has the potential to totally transform the politics of the UAW, to bring it into a more militant, progressive, make it a more militant, progressive union that's willing to fight. And I think we're seeing that. And we saw that at the convention we just had recently for the bargaining convention. Everybody in the end came together, committed to fighting in the Big Three negotiations. I know that the members in my region, in the University of California, California State, Washington, we're all committed to supporting the Big Three and their contract negotiations and their fight, potentially a strike. We'll see in a few months.
Yeah. Chris, do you have any kind of response to that?
Oh yeah, we're going to go on strike. Is that what you meant?
Oh no, I just meant about the kind of all these grad students.
Oh
coming
no,
into the United Auto Workers.
Yeah, they're awesome. I meet so many. I've met so many working with UAWD, and I didn't even know, or maybe I heard that we had grad students in the union, grad workers, I should say, because they're workers. You're all workers to me. I work in auto. We build cars there, but you build mines. Your labor is necessary to make that university function, and I totally get that. And I love the enthusiasm I'm getting from we're getting from student workers. They've gotten in fights. They've won fights. It took me like I didn't know anything about labor going into reading books, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I need to get more of my friends reading books so that way we can read labor books and actually learn. There's not enough movies about it other than ones that are about how mobbed up the Teamsters are, right? There are a few good union movies, but my wife, she's in the audience. We love Newsies so much. And
Newsies, yes.
And we should really be bringing people to there to see what happens when the Newsies and workers all stick together. But yeah, the enthusiasm, the knowledge, and the experience of fighting and winning and conducting campaigns in which you have all these different campuses that are so separate. We're on. I'm in a factory. If I need to go somewhere, I just go over there, right? It's a bit different, right? So they have so much knowledge to give and enthusiasm, and they see that we need each other really because we're one big union, and I want to get some UAW locals in the college campuses near me for sure. Right now the U of M ones they're going on strike right now. It's actually gone past the semester, so U of M actually faked grades for all of them, which is crazy to me. And that's that's one of the stories I know of how much power you've got as student workers, grad. You can actually get them to basically commit. It's not fraud, but it's basically like academic fraud, more or less. It's awesome what they're capable of, and I hope to work with them for a very long time.
Speaking of working for a very long time, Abby, how do we organize for the long term, and what is that going to functionally look like, especially in unions like yours that are historically very militant, but also the hundreds or thousands of unions across the country that are not the CTU?
Yeah, totally. I'm very lucky that I'm a member of the Chicago Teachers Union. Extremely lucky that I'm a member of a union where I can call the vice president of my union at 7:30 in the morning from a bathroom, and he picks up the phone, and I can be like, hey, this shit's fucked. That's not the reality for most people in the United States. Most union members in the United States are in a union where, a lot like what you were saying, you don't know how to turn in your union card, or you don't know who your shop steward is, right? Or they're non-union, and it's just, what you get is what you get. You could get fired tomorrow for looking at someone the wrong way, right? So how do we organize for the long term? And I think what is really the basis of it is solidarity, right? And being able to work, being willing to work hard as well, right? And being willing to stick for what's right and stick for what's good. I think as socialists, our role really is to put our values first. We do know what the working class needs. I think we're very well akin to it. We think about it all the time, right? That is our political affiliation. And we need to put that forward in the workplace, right? And I think we've just heard a lot of examples of this. And so organizing for the long term means just using our solidarity to help each other out, whether that's UAW workers in a factory, or UAW workers in a grad school, or Unite Here members and teachers who are working together, right? We need to, through our unions, build solidarity.
Yeah. Josh, can I kind of ask you a similar question? What do you see as kind of the long-term project within Unite Here? What's your vision for service workers organizing in the years to come?
Yeah, it's solidarity. That's definitely one of the things that has to happen, right? We have to make a commitment to each other to back each other up in fights, right? That means basically showing up. It's also people have to, and forgive the jargon, I'll explain it, people have to buy into program, right? You have to believe that this shit is actually revolutionary. When I was younger, I read a bit of Debs, I read a little bit of Marx and Lenin, oh yeah, capitalism is fucked, oh. But it wasn't until I got in the union and I actually did praxis, right? Putting theory to action, right? Actually doing something that actually started to click, right? In short, Unite, yes, you can quote me on this, Unite Here made me a communist, yes. That's what happened. But, it's buying into the program that things are possible and that possibility leads to better. Look, I like I just said earlier, I started off as a dishwasher making $11.60 an hour. My mom was making 10. And I love my mother very much, but I could never live like her. I could never just go to work and continuously feel that same cycle of hopelessness over and over and over again. And now I have a 5-year-old son. He has special needs. I can't afford to ever show him that things are not possible to change, right? He's looking at me a couple of months ago, there was a Unite Here action at the Senate. And so, I took my son so he could be on my shoulders and, see I tell him these are his aunts and his uncles, right, that are fighting for a better contract. Now, did he try to slap Bernie Sanders' head, like a bongo drum? Yes, but he got to see that. And there's this little video that was posted on Twitter, and he'll see me chanting, if we ain't got no justice, we ain't got no peace, and he'll just keep flipping that over and over and over again, that one particular spot. So it's teaching the new generation, and then for us, it's buying in. And then the third thing is we have to not be afraid, right? And I say this as an organizer and also as a socialist. The first as an organizer seems like a no-brainer, right? We get people by making the ask. Will you stand with me? Will you sign this union card? Will you come to a meeting? Giving them an assignment, rating them on 1 to 4 or 5, right? Where are they at? How can we move these people forward in development? The same way it should be for socialists here in DSA, right? Like, I personally believe that we need to reach out to more, like, workers, rank and file workers, whether they're teachers, auto workers, grad students, hospitality workers. I have a comrade that is now down in Virginia. He just joined his DSA chapter, so claps for that. And then he's like, yeah, that's great. But then I'm looking at this awesome young, like, black leader that's moving in the union. He may not be able to always eloquate it, right? But, like, he understands the current situation. Get his ass in your chapter as well, right? Like, you need to have that political education and movement. Now, even with me, right? Like, I have, I said I was at Georgetown. There's a current DSA member that I knew when they were a student, and they also, kept in touch with me and brought me in, right? Like, hey, make a commitment to this organization as well. We have to be unafraid to make these asks, right? And grow the organization in ways, because the worker power that's there on the shop floor is what's going to actually move. Like, our friends and our foes are eventually going to hear about this convention. They're going to hear about what we said or what we did somehow, some way. But, like, it's the practical applications of theory and praxis and strategy of how we're actually going to move workers forward. And the only way we're going to move workers forward is, 1, solidarity, 2, development, and 3, not just being on, we're fighting for better wages. We're also fighting for a better world too, because eventually these concessions are going to come to some type of halt. And are we going to be in a position to say we want the earth, or are we going to be in some type of fucked up dystopia? I got a 5-year-old. I want him to have the earth. And so that's what I'm going to do. I don't know what anybody else is going to do, but that's what the fuck I'm going to do.
Yeah, I have one more question for the panel, but while I'm asking that, if people would like to line up here behind the mic, we're going to do audience questions for the last section of this. So everybody come together. I wanted to ask Chris kind of a similar question, but what do you kind of feel like the obstacles that we have coming up are?
I think our biggest obstacle is getting over people's fear and having them get over the idea that nothing can get better. Like, people really do think that, like, things are only going to get worse. There's nothing you can possibly do, and that's wrong. And we know it's wrong. We've seen it in action. We see it in practice. As Josh was saying, like, when we do actually organize, when we do actually make those asks, we fight and win, like, always. We just need people to, we just need to get through, and we have to be humble. We can't just be like, we have all the answers, we're the smartest, anything like that. Like, people see right through that. They know that you don't know their, if you're not a rank and file worker with them, they know that you're, an outsider more or less, right? But if you're humble and you ask where they're struggling and what they need, like the Detroit DSA, Metro Detroit DSA did a great thing. I told you about the signs that said Solidarity Forever, Everyone, Tier 1. Those were DSA signs. Those are not UAW sanctioned signs. We didn't have enough signs, and they came to the line and they asked, "What do you need?" People are bringing pizzas, people are bringing pop, food, whatever. Sorry, we say pop. I don't know if they do in Chicago. Anyway, or where you're from. But they wanted signs, and these signs were super popular. You'll see them in just about every picture from that strike, at least in Michigan, and definitely at my plant in Detroit. If you see Bernie out there on the strike picket line, you see a ton of those. And because they were not loved, or because they were not UAW sanctioned, they were some of them were thrown away to the point where I was on the picket line one day, and a woman, a sister of mine, Michelle, she had brought hers with her, her Solidarity Forever, Everyone Team 1 sign, because she believed in it. And I think that's the effect that we can have is, connecting with the struggles that people are having in their workplace, on the picket line, potentially with their unions, and saying, well, what do you need? What can we do? What's what can we possibly do to help you out, and giving them something to believe in, giving them something like that, giving them something that, you know, gets people talking. What are tiers? No, I don't think tiers were on anyone's brain 4 years ago, and you know, I still have to explain these issues to people. So it's also communication, but it's definitely like, you know, how do we humble ourselves, and how do we, you know, be the best possible comrades we can to every worker in their struggle, and just do that.
Yeah.
That's my advice.
Abby has something she'd like to add.
I 100% agree, and I just want to add on, and I think like this is something that I had to learn, and I think it's important for socialists, is like, be a normal person. Like, if your coworker is talking about a show, watch the show and talk to them about it. You don't have to be like Mr. All Theory all the time, right? There's times where you can just be a normal person, build community with your coworkers. This is not gonna work if you don't do that. Literally, I'm leaving from here to go drink with my coworkers. Like, yeah, like, this is super important for a task. Like, connect with some of these things at work, but also like, don't be a weirdo in the workplace with a pamphlet, wearing one of those newsboy hats or whatever, you know, like, actually be a normal person
Unless
if
your
you're gonna do
workplace
this.
is the Newsies.
Unless your workplace is the Newsies, then you can wear the hat. But yeah, anyways, I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Did you have anything you wanted to?
Maybe, I know that we're running short on time.
Oh, no, we're good. We're great.
We're good, okay. Yeah, yeah, so as far as like, you know, how do we build lasting power? I think, you know, one of the things that we really need to be able to think about right now is we're seeing a lot of labor action across the country. There are like 3 active strikes in LA right now. A couple more that have already ended. There's a lot happening and a lot of organizing happening across the country. And I think we really need to think hard at how do we transform these flashpoint struggles into a lasting movement, to lasting institutions. And I think that there's a strain on the left to be anti-institutional, which for good reason. There are many institutions we need to topple. But we need to build alternative institutions that are going to bring together working class power. And so this is, you know, something we really have to figure out. And I think to build institutions, we really need to be able to have labor institutions, a program that really focuses on identifying rank and file leaders, that moves them up to, you know, become towards elected office, onto staff, and to be able to have the kind of institutional memory that we need to be able to succeed. These flashpoint struggles are really important, but we need to be able to have an institution that lasts beyond just that set of leaders that struggle. And I think that's something that we often struggle to figure out. But anyway, yeah.
Great. Okay, we will now take questions from the audience. Sarah right here will be timing you, so none of that, this is more of a comment than a question, talk forever stuff. And we'll also be doing progressive stacks, so if you get moved in the line, be nice to the person who's moving you.
Hi, yeah. My question is for the UAW folks. Since I've joined UAW, I've seen a lot of like solidarity between auto workers and between academic workers, which has been like really awesome to see. I am wondering, and sort of like the fights coming up, I know that like both groups have been sort of building a lot of like power within their own ranks, like sort of like building up the organizational structures of like the universities and of the plants. I'm wondering how you guys think that we could sort of like fuse or like come together as like sort of to build power in step with each other in order to like gain more control over the basically of the economy and be able to like shut down like entire swaths of the economy all at once.
You want to take this one?
That's a hell of a question. I really don't know. Yeah, I like I was saying, I really wish there were some UAW campuses near me, to be honest. I I would love to see be able to hop on a picket line with student workers, but I would say that I met a lot through UAWD. I recommend joining if you want, if you're thinking about it, or hopping on one of our meetings, and just and actually just getting to know each other. We have phone banks and all that. You can actually, if you're a student worker, you can talk to auto workers. Auto workers want to talk to you. Sorry, that's a dumb joke. Anyway, that I would say that's one way, and I know people who have done that, and they have these long-lasting like friendships. People that have like checked in on each other, and I know that that's like a really, really small thing, but I mean, like, it's really awesome when I hear that there are people out there that, you know, you never would have met them in any other context. Your world would never cross, and that's one way to do it. And then when conventions come up, we need mixers and all that, and I was going to suggest this earlier. This is a lovely space, big convention center, love it. UAW is now like retweeting NYC DSA. I just saw it, and I'm like, how much more time before we get this at Black Lake, which is the UAW's hotel, everything. Get everybody up there. I know it's way up in the Lower Peninsula. It's like 5 hours from here. It's just as far away from Detroit as it is from Chicago is from me. But I think that would be a totally awesome way to get that going. And that is our education center. That is our Solidarity Union Education Center. And that's how you can meet more people and start putting together, building like cross caucuses with different, and it's not just auto, we have other manufacturing as well, and other like desk jobs even, like legal services and all that. So it's a very expansive union, and I hope you get to meet people that way, if you so choose.
Can we take the next question and then you can kind of respond to both? Go ahead.
I think this is maybe a reasonable follow-up. I'm going to just like really blow this up here. So, PSUFA, AFT Local 3571, I organize adjunct faculty. And I just finished reading Class Struggle Unionism, and there's so much talk in that book about breaking the law. And I want to talk about illegal activities as a strategy. So I'm curious if you have seen any utility. You don't have to be specific if you're like afraid about people hearing, but
If you're a cop, you have to say so.
if you have seen any strategic utility in doing things that are illegal to advance your struggle, and if you see like what you see the future of, radical labor history was like full of law breaking, and that's like how we got where we are. So like, what do you see as like the near or long-term future of illegal activity as a strategy?
Spicy question. Who's brave?
I'll go.
Okay, go ahead, Josh.
Look, so there we go. Look, so like in general, I'm not gonna highlight any alleged illegal activities that I've done. That's not the case for that. But I think, in this long history of like civil disobedience and other actions that are already commonplace within the movement, those are going to continue. And like, we have to acknowledge that this war on workers, the war on like trans and gay people in general is going to keep ratcheting it up, right? There's going to be a lot of attack on civil liberties that most everyone in this room is going to be called to like do something about in some type of way. And so like, look, legally, just in case there is a cop somewhere in here, I hope not, but like legally I'm not advocating for anything illegal, but like I'm telling you, be prepared to do like stuff that you wouldn't have done before. That's what I'll say. And like, look, that is what built, not entirely, but definitely was, one of our weapons, right? Look, it's standing up and fighting back against goons and like police and like all types of other forces that would keep us down. And I think every union has a history of, in some type of manner, whether physically or judiciously, but rather it be illegal, going up against the power of like capital in the state in some type of way. And I think, don't talk about it so openly, but like keep it in the back of your mind.
Laura Wadlin, shop steward with AFT. So we're frequently confronted with the question of whether a strike is worth it. How should we go about assessing that as organizers in our own workplaces? It seems like some DSA members view a strike as mainly a tool to get a better contract or a test of the organizing you've already done, and other DSA members, like myself, view it as a tool to win good contracts and as a generative experience, since strikes create shop floor leaders and raise consciousness both in the union and outside of it. So this is complicated, and I'm not asking you to make a decision instead of workers who are in the fight, but what's your general analysis? Do you think that if workers can get a good contract and avoid striking, that's ideal? Or do you think that if workers are prepared to strike and they get the opportunity, they should take it?
I'm willing to speak on it. I don't want to hog up too much time. I can speak after this one.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, I'll say this point blank. I've never had the luxury of striking where I work, where I worked at Georgetown, right? I think overall, like, basic unionism is that people are invested in the contract fight to get the benefits, right? And the strike is like our nuclear bomb. And so most members are like, yeah, if we can get something from the company without striking, right, that's great. But like, we should never take it off the table. But that strike only really, that threat of a strike or like striking in general, I think with respect, I think I saw this on Twitter, by the way, because we're mutuals, I believe. Yeah. I think I responded to you. So like, respectfully again, right, like we don't take it off the table, right? Because I think we're on the same page. So we have to use all of our tools to get the concessions from the bosses, right? But it's a matter of organization. Like, I came from the shop floor in food service. There were a lot of people that said, we should go out on strike. Everyone said, strike. And that's great to hear, but then if you were to go to them and say, hey, are you willing to like sign this petition? I don't know, my guy, I don't know how to, will you stand and go march on the boss with me? All that shit, right? So it's like striking or the threat of strikes or even any action that we have in our toolkit has to come with organization. Someone has to actually first talk to them to build that organization so we have the capacity to actually credibly threaten, in any case, a strike. And before we even like really start talking about strikes, in my experience, right, people have to get comfortable taking action at all. What's their level of doing things? Okay, are they going to wear a union button? That's a way to survey support. Are they willing to do delegations? How many times? How more intense, right? Are they willing to do some type of other actions where they're doing house visits? Are they having a structure if they're a committee? How many in their structure do they hold? Are they recruiting more committee, depending on the size of the shop? Usually it's like a ratio of 1 to every 10, right? These are all things to consider. So like, when I think about this question of like, is striking like, overall, right? Like how we want to see it, right? I think we don't want to put the wagon before the horse, right? We have to make sure that we have all our shit together before we can even talk about the strike. And like, look, members do want contracts. We're in this stage of like basic unionism where people want contracts and benefits and wages, right? But like, we should never tell members like, oh, we're not going to put all our cards on the table. We should tell members what A. Philip Randolph said, and I'm paraphrasing him here. In the game of life, in the seat of, I'm paraphrasing. In the game of life, right, the seat of nature, what you're able to take and hold is what you get. And the only way you're going to be able to take and hold it is through organization. That's it. I don't know if anybody wants to. But not, I just want to make clear, right? Like just to follow that up, like real quick, like we just have to make sure that we're like building them up to those actions to make that shit credible. That's really it. Now I'm done. I'm gonna do the Unite Here thing, step back, somebody else can talk.
Yeah, so, we just went through a strike, and yes, that's done a lot for our organization. A ton of new leaders came in through the strike. We're much more powerful than we were prior to the strike. And it's been really important for, developing our politics, all that. But I will say, after being on strike for 6 weeks, it's tough. It's really difficult being on strike, especially for that long. And, when I think about this, and I'm organizing, talking to workers, as we were building up for the strike, if I had gone up to a worker who only just recently even learned what a union was, who just, signed their first union authorization card, and I said, well, we're preparing to go on strike to, build the organization, not sure that really would have worked. Members are motivated because they want to transform their lives. Whether we're talking about the big three and we're talking about tiers and not having COLA, people want to transform that. This is why they want to go on strike. And I know, yes, there are other important reasons why we need to consider why about striking, but at the end of the day, it really is about transforming people's lives. And the strike is our most powerful tool, and we need to use it. And yes, that will build things, but again, the way that I think about this is when I'm talking to a coworker, how am I talking to them? How do I organize them to take action?
So in the interest of time, so that people can sit down, let's take 5 questions all at once, and then we'll have the panel answer, and then we'll go back. So go ahead.
My name is Micah, she, her, from Iowa City, Iowa. My question is specifically around an issue that we've recently had, where our members and the community at large is having trouble working with the Teamsters because of an issue with their leader. I'm not going to get into details about it, but it is kind of serious. And now we are struggling to figure out how to move forward to continue working with rank and file. And so any thoughts or suggestions? Thank you.
Is the mic there?
Sorry. Nah. Sorry. So my name is Alex. I'm part of IBEW. It's Local 291, former Teamster. I'm running for the National Political Committee. So my question is, and it kind of piggybacks off of their thing, specifically, just quick story. So when I was a shop steward for the Teamsters, I organized March on the Boss. There was contract failures, boss was not doing it. Told them not to call the BA. They called the BA. BA basically scheduled a meeting, failed to show, never rescheduled, killing the militancy right there. I've had a lot of bad experience with labor bureaucracy, purging members illegally. It's within people from my caucus, and especially from the brothers and sisters that have gone into the union bureaucracy from the rank and file, which is good. What is your experience with that specifically? How should DSA within the rank and file program and the rank and file stuff that we're pushing, push back against that and fight back against that? Because in my opinion, the rank and file is a lot more important than the labor bureaucracy, because that's where all the power of the union rests. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kevin Gallagher. I'm labor co-chair, Baltimore DSA. I also unionized my Apple store in Towson, Maryland. We're the first unionized Apple store in the United States. Thank you. So the Machinist Union was a really cool and great partner for us. I had a really good experience with my organizer, had an amazing experience with my negotiator right now. I'm part of the bargaining committee. But I've seen other Apple stores and other people in my city and across the country have not so great experiences with organizers and negotiators. And it seems as though there is a large amount of organizers and negotiators who seem to be out of touch with the new worker, the new labor movement. And so what is the DSA's responsibility, or what steps should we be taking to help bring people from first conversation to first contract? How do we insert ourselves into that experience? And also, how do we reform unions as they are in order for them to be able to do that on their own?
Hey folks, I'm a little short, but I think you can hear me. My name is Katie. I'm a Boston DSA member. I'm also BU Grad Worker Union member and former teacher. And I feel like I have two sort of homes in activism work. I think one space is the labor movement and the other is in disability justice. And I feel like those two things should go together, but sometimes they don't feel like they do. Sometimes I feel like disability is not centered within the labor movement in the ways that it should. And I'm thinking about strikes. And I'm thinking about myself as a disabled person, and I'm thinking about my other disabled comrades, and I'm thinking about what does a disability justice-centered strike look like, particularly because we know that we're living amidst a continuing mass disabling pandemic, and just capitalism and white supremacy is disabling in and of itself. So the disability community is only going to grow. So how can we bring these two movements together is what I'm wondering.
Hi, Will, he, him, from Chicago. My question is for our shop floor leaders on the panel. Following up on DSA's fantastic UPS Strike Ready solidarity work, DSA is starting to prepare a Strike Ready campaign to support the big three automakers, and I hope everybody after this panel can come to the front. We're going to take a solidarity picture with some of the signs that we have. So stick around, come take a picture. But my question is both, specifically for Chris in this fight, but generally for all of you who work in shops, have coworkers that you're trying to organize, what are the kinds of concrete solidarity actions that DSA chapters can do both during a strike, but also before a strike, leading up to a strike, that will help you and your coworkers feel stronger in staring down the boss, and also help you bring your coworkers into DSA? Thanks.
Okay. Cool. We'll answer these questions and then we'll get back to the line. So we've got a question about turfiness, question about when leadership shuts down its members, one about what DSA is doing about kind of leadership that doesn't know how to keep up with the rank and file, disability justice when it comes to strikes, and how we can support Big Three. Did anybody have any that they were really?
I think.
Okay. Go off, Abby.
All right. I'm going to answer questions 2 and 3 together. Because I think it kind of gets to this similar strain. And I've said this already, I'm really lucky that I'm a Chicago Teachers Union member. And most union members in the United States are in fundamentally undemocratic unions, right? They're in unions where you don't know when you can go vote on something. You don't know when the union meeting is. When I was still a union organizer, I met a nurse that didn't even know it was complicated. She didn't know she was in union. Turned out her union was literally a mob-run union. It was crazy. It was crazy. Anyways, so that's a fundamental experience, and I'm gonna brag a little bit about my partner because he's in one of those unions, right? In a union that is massive, but has been run by this bureaucratic force for years that is nearly unwilling to respond to the needs of the workers in the union. And so what are our role as socialists? And that's being a shop floor leader. And that's what I see him do all the time. When his union's saying that we can't demand higher wages, he's the one that goes back to his coworkers and says, we absolutely have to demand higher wages. There's no way around that. Being a leader in your workplace, being the person that people can go to is so important. When we shouted at our shop stewards, seriously guys, shout out your shop stewards. Those are the people that can make that happen. Work with your shop stewards. If your shop steward's not good, run. Do what you can to grab the handles of power the best that you can. Sorry, let me say something that I was going to say earlier, but the power comes from us as rank and file workers, right? That's where the power lies. If your union's not working for you, continue to organize with your coworkers. You know best. It's your working conditions, right? Not your staffers' working conditions. When I was an organizer, there was no way I could really know the working conditions. I could use all the empathy that my body gives me, but I could not know the working conditions of transit operators, right? Because I was not a transit operator. I relied on rank and file shop floor leaders to tell me, right? And I had to be humble. So if you are a staffer, I think we've already talked about being humble. That is such an important part, right? Listen to the workers who you are organizing for. You work for them. So if you're a staffer, you need to remember that you work for them. And be strong. I mean, that's the main thing, is you have to be brave and you have to be strong. So that's summing it up. About labor movement and disability justice. I'm a special education teacher. I teach disabled children. And CTU demanded a nurse in every school. Yeah, it's a big deal, right? A lot of the ways that we can bring together the labor movement and the disability justice movement is through our demands, right? The labor movement has to demand disability justice. As was said, I don't know what happened to the person, but we just went through a mass disabling event, right? And so our demands have to reflect those needs, right? Especially if you're in a big public sector, and also health and safety. I'm gonna leave it from there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there was a question about supporting the big three, and one of the things that we've been doing in Region 6. So for those of you who don't know, the UAW is divided into a number of regions. Region 6 is the newly formed West Coast region, so Washington, California, Nevada. And that region is primarily higher education, but there are also some auto locals. And one of the things that we started doing recently is we've been having these strategy sessions where higher ed workers and auto workers come together to figure out, together strategize what are the ways that we can work together to support the big three bargaining and potentially a strike. There are some interesting ideas there about, targeting auto dealers. That's still being figured out. But I think the most important thing that's happening here, and this is probably going to go beyond this round of negotiations, is we're really committed to creating a program in which auto workers and hired workers together come to share skills in organizing. Because ultimately that's what it's going to take to actually win. We need to be able to organize on a mass scale, and the more we learn from each other, the better we're going to be able to do that. The other thing that we're also thinking about together is what is our organizing strategy going forward? Higher education workers, one of the reasons why it's so important to organize higher education is because we're talking about workers that are at the beginning of their career. They are going to graduate soon and go on to other workplaces, taking with them the knowledge on what it's like to have a union, but also the skills for organizing. And they're going into other industries that are very related to auto manufacturing. Lots of the workers in my union are engineers who work on EV. They work on batteries, and they're going off to other industries. And we need to be able to make sure to tap into that so that they can organize their workplaces and we can organize on a mass scale so that we can actually organize the entire EV pipeline from research all the way to production, all under one big union. That is going to be powered on a mass scale, and that's what we're trying to do together on the West Coast.
Yeah, so I know that we're all members of different chapters. So the auto industry is very concentrated in the Midwest and specifically Michigan. So there's only a few Michigan chapters, and there's definitely a lot in the Midwest. But we do. When I started in warehouses, and I would ship out parts from Pontiac to everywhere around the country, even Canada, and maybe some other places too. I believe Brazil as well, and all over the world, really. But there is somewhere near you that there is a warehouse, or as Ralph was saying, the dealerships. They are near you. They can be. We don't know what the plan is for the dealerships necessarily, but there are plants or warehouses you can go to and join the picket line. And as you're saying, we do need organizational skills. You will learn stuff from us too on getting satisfaction on the floor. As I was saying with the gasoline problem we were having, other huge safety issues as well. But again, UAWD, we have phone banks. We're calling people. We have giant lists of people that have signed our pledge, have made contact with us in some way, shape, or form. They care about something. That's why they joined. They may not have skills that you have, or they might have more. But we need to reach as many of them as humanly possible to get the word out, to get everyone prepared. Because some locals are kind of dragging their feet, even with UPS, even with Teamsters. I went to a practice picket, and it was all UAW folks that were out there, and it was great. I loved showing the solidarity, and we had a couple of Teamsters. But just putting yourself out there, connecting with people, and actually following through to help and show that you care and you're willing to help them out, and then connect with them over the phone, and then talk them into, as Josh was saying, what will you do? What are you ready to do? Are you ready to spread some pamphlets around that will call for meeting on the floor meeting or on the parking lot meeting, that sort of thing that Teamsters are doing. People haven't done that in UAW, really. Generally speaking, we definitely didn't do that in 2019. I don't think that we've done that anytime in the past few decades. So those things work, and we just need more people to be able to connect with someone who's willing to pick up the phone from a phone number that they don't recognize.
Cool. All right, let's take 5 more questions.
I'm Jane Slaughter from Detroit DSA. I covered the auto industry for Labor Notes for many years, so seen a lot of changes there. The biggest being, so far, the tremendous victory, Chris, that you were part of, where UAWD beat back the administration caucus and took over the executive board, in spite of almost every single local union president, the entire staff, the entire machinery of that union being brought to bear to try to beat the reformers. You guys still won. So my question is, what changes have you seen in what's happening from the top, but just as important, from the bottom? How are members' attitudes changing? What are people saying? Do you see optimism that you might actually be able to beat the companies this fall, instead of the cynicism that I've witnessed for all these years?
Hi, my name is Hondo Wang. I'm a shop steward in Local 1549 in AFSCME. I heard someone mention Janus, and I wanted to share an anecdote from a few weeks ago at an AFSCME conference where the international union staff was like, before Janus was great because everyone was a member of the union and we didn't need to organize. That was a direct quote from them. And I feel like we can't discount the need to develop worker militancy and organization, especially on the shop floor. We can pass all the legislation we want, but it won't move workers to raise expectations unless they see themselves as the agents of change. So if we can't develop their politics from the sidelines, selling newspapers maybe outside the factory gates, what can we do? So if socialists need to be involved and integrated in the labor movement, what can DSA members do to move them and develop them and get them closer to that level of consciousness we need to change the world?
All right, building on that question, I'm Dan Albright from Boston, member IUPAT 939. Yeah, we're doing great in our chapter with academic workers, pretty good with teachers, folks that come out of college. We're making inroads with Starbucks, healthcare, but, industrial sectors, Teamsters, ATU, SEIU, Unite Here, we have almost no one, and as my brother on the right said, we need to do better in bringing those people into our movement. So what are your thoughts on, how we can get more of the traditional current labor movement into DSA?
Hi, my name is Rob. I'm in New York City DSA. I'm a barista in a corporately owned factory or bakery with a staff of over 60 people, the majority of whom are porters, bakers, pastry makers, and chefs. A subsection of them are baristas who do the retail work. The majority of the baristas are on board for organizing for a union. We have connections with and members of our like organizing committee that are chefs or bakers. But there's also, like this huge issue. Well, there's a language issue, right? Because at least 50% or more of back of house speaks predominantly Spanish. But I guess the main question I have is when one department of like a factory situation and food service is on board for something and organizing, what is our responsibility and what can we do to agitate where we don't have that kind of membership and activity?
Hi, everybody. My name is Desmond. I'm from the Boston chapter, and I'm a new member of Unite Here Local 26. So, hi, brother. My question is very simple. Chris talked about his experience with UAWD and their very inspiring fight to democratize the UAW. What I wanted to know is how important do you think the fight for democracy in unions is, and how does it connect to your day-to-day organizing on the shop floor? Thank you.
All right. Team, are there any of those questions that you have an immediate response to?
I'll respond to Jane's right away because I owe her an article about it anyway. Jane, I will say leadership at my plant definitely were behind the administration caucus, but they are very positive on the new leadership. In large part, or in no small part, due to the fact that they showed up to my local my plant and shook hands with people as they were exiting. All of leadership came out. All of them talked to them. I talked to a union brother that I really have great respect for. He's a bit of a reformer in our union, but he was not with me on this. He did not like the referendum. He said he wanted to shake someone's hand before he voted for them. And I watched him shake Sean Fain's hand. And I asked him immediately after, and he said, "I have faith. We're going to win." And that was wonderful for me because this is a point of contention between us for 2 or 3 years. He's actually the disdainful union brother that I wrote about many years ago, actually. So it's great to see him come around, and people on the floor are awesome. They are excited. They're I'm in group chats and I'm saying like, hey, there's going to be a Facebook Live where the president's going to go on and give our demand or talk about our demands, the members' demands. And like people were telling me, and I'm like, wow, this is the reverse of what I've been doing, and this is so great to be getting that level of engagement, and people are excited, and I'll like ask them like how they feel about it, and like they're pumped, like they're excited. They've never seen this level of communication before, and I think this might partially answer the question from the last question, but like democratizing helps communication, because I feel like what happens is I had a conversation with a friend and union brother yesterday, and he said, I think that sometimes people get in and they get a little lazy, because we're all naturally lazy in a way. And, unfortunately, sometimes they never get challenged on things. And being challenged makes you better. I want to be challenged by my coworkers, by my union siblings. Because I need to get better, because it's our livelihoods, it's our lives, and seeing that democratization happen, and people their minds expanding, oh, wait a minute, I can be president of of our union, or I can be regional. It never would have occurred to anybody, because a lot of people see it as just I'm going to swear too, an ass kissing line, basically. That's how a lot of people view it, on the shop floor. So I'm very thankful that I was part of it, and I can't wait to do more.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak a little to the question of democracy, and so when a union is democratic, that's when it's powerful. And our orientation towards democracy has always been about high participation, because it doesn't really matter how perfect your democratic structures are if only 10% of the workforce is participating, if only 36% of the workers in a shop are members. It's not really democratic. And so since 2017 in our union, when we reformed our local, our biggest concern has always been to ensure that there's high participation in our union. In 2014, when we ratified our contract, there were about 4,000 people who voted for the contract. In this most recent round of negotiations, the final vote was 36,000. Yeah.
Big.
Massive increase. And that was because we devoted many years and resources to identifying leaders in every department, every campus, every sector, because only that's what it would take, a structure of leaders everywhere to actually organize their coworkers to take action, to participate, to vote on the ratification vote, to go on strike, and ultimately to ratify the contract. And I think that's what we need to really think about is, in order for us to have a democratic union, then it means having a high participation union. And we have to figure out what it takes to actually bring workers to participate and take ownership over their union.
I love when I can pull threads from other questions because that helps answer it. Not to be problematic, but we could say that maybe Janus was good for the labor movement because it kicked its ass into gear. I don't know if that's problematic. It might just be true. I don't really have anything to say other than that. You could talk until your face turns blue about some policy that's happening in DC, but like most workers want to talk about what's going on where they work, right? And that's where we can continue to organize. The question on how do we bring the labor movement into DSA, what about how do we bring DSA into the labor movement? Get a union job. It's changed my life. It's changed the lives of many people I know. Getting a union job provides you with, and this is just to give a shout out, it provides you with this level of security that you wouldn't have working in some downtown office, right? It brings you closer to who you are as a working class person, right? So what do we do? To the person organizing a new union, first of all, I'm just wondering, mapping out your workplace is really important. Seeing if anyone has ever had connections. I forget, someone in labor notes could correct me. There's really good resources on how to map out your workplace and see whose relationships with who, right? Maybe you have a coworker that speaks Spanish. You have to do that in order to organize. So that's my answer to that. And yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be very brief in answering some of these. I'm going to group three of them together, what is the role that DSA can play in labor? Look, I came from a university and, on campus are students, right? The people that I'm primarily working for and feeding. And so at the end of the day, right, when we were about to do our contract, they came up to us and said, what do you need? And so if there was an action or a rally, they were with us, right? They didn't take over and they didn't say, we're gonna fight for you. But the most important thing they did was, number one, they stood in solidarity, and then number two, they encouraged the workers to fight, because it can't just be the students alone fighting, it has to be the workers. It can't be some type of, I don't know what you call it, the students are gonna solve all your problems. No, students have our backs, and that was the student worker organizing that is known primarily in Unite here. I think a couple other unions do it that have turf in universities, but that was something that was part of my original organizing when I got started in the union. And I think the ESA has been pretty successful in a lot of ways with these recent campaigns. When it comes to building density in departments, right, mapping is absolutely crucial, right? You're gonna need that. Don't discount those other departments, because negativity in the workplace or fear in the workplace has a hell of a way of spreading around if you don't have a strong leader. So map out, figure that out real quick. And then I think the last thing that I'll actually touch upon real quick, it's like really, again, this kind of also builds into like bringing rank and file workers into DSA, right? Again, it's going back and having those conversations, right? Conversation just like union organizing, but also for socialism. The second is, I want to actually touch upon what you just said. It's not just getting a union job, it's making the jobs out here union. SALT. I was a SALT, I did it 3 times, right? Not before I joined the union, after. I would leave out from Georgetown, take a summer break, go someplace, organize it, right? Make the jobs union. Don't just wait for a union job, make the damn job union. So that's it.
Yeah, so unfortunately we won't have time to answer these last questions, but if everybody wants to just come up and say your question and then we can all kind of consider them and maybe you can talk to the panelists afterwards.
Thanks. I'm Mara, I'm with UAW in Washington State. I was hoping we could talk about open and participatory and transparent bargaining. I know like in the strike Rafa's been telling us about, members, right, got like a summary after every bargaining session, right? What happened at the table and the full text of every proposal that was passed back and forth across the table. And like, I've been with Unite Here members, like hotel workers, right? Like sitting in the lobby of the hotel, conducting the negotiations, like with the boss and the workers in the room. That's not the norm in all of our unions, right? It's not the norm in Unite Here, it's not the norm in UAW, it's not the norm in AFT. And like, there's been amazing victories, like the Teamsters victory was won without open bargaining. The UAW, what I hope will be an amazing victory this summer, will happen without open bargaining. So what do we do? And do we throw up our hands? Do we say, oh, everybody bargains different ways, we all have our own styles? Do we have a Jane McAlevey reading group? Is there another way that we can like fight and push for the kind of open and transparent participatory bargaining that we need in our workplaces? Thanks.
Great question.
Hi, my name is Whitney. I'm from Seattle. I'm an educator and a shop steward in my building and part of the Rank and File Caucus. We went on strike this fall and it was amazing and it was a shit show. We had like every turn, bargaining was a black box. We tried to organize community support and they said no, they don't want to, no one from the bargaining team is allowed to talk to the community. We voted to have our strike, if we had a strike, we would end it by reading the contract and agreeing on the TA on the line, and our leadership went to war on that, going to every single site and convincing people they were just confused when they voted for it. They then proceeded to yell at the membership, and we got a TA in the middle of the night at midnight, and we had to be on a Zoom call at 8 a.m. It was a horrible way to end it, and people had to be back at work the next day. And so my question is like, what is the kind of most toxic, horrible, conservative strategies that you've seen, and how does rank and file organizing play into purging our unions of these issues? Thanks.
Okay, hi, David Pronunciahim from Sacramento. I was privileged to be a member of 3 unions during my working life. Now I'm not. A lot of DSA members, for whatever reason, are not either members or staff of unions. And from my own experience and from observing, I've seen that even the unions that do the best job of representing their members are not on board with anywhere near a socialist program. And sometimes they fight with each other over turf, or they don't support single-payer health care because of good health care that they've won. In a lot of other countries, and once upon a time in the United States, it kind of went without saying that unions identified as socialists. And my question is really, how can some of us in DSA who are not union members or staff, what are some things we can do to make that happen again? It's not going to be an easy thing, but it seems it would give us a leg up in trying to bring more socialist consciousness to unions and vice versa.
Hi, Eric Him, New York City. Comrade just before me mentioned single-payer healthcare. That's what I was wanting to talk about. Single-payer would be such a boon for unions. It would take healthcare off the bargaining table. First step in corporate playbooks when workers do go on strike is they strip healthcare benefits. How do you think this labor resurgence can sort of utilize the power of eras past where unions helped win the weekend, unions helped win Medicare in the first place, Civil Rights Act, et cetera, how do we move beyond sort of like the individual union fights to demand like national reforms that would materially benefit the working class? Thanks.
Hello, my name is Tegan. I'm from Central Vermont DSA, and in the last year, I started a job as a paraeducator, and I like tried to get involved with the union. There already was an NEA local there, and I ran into a lot of issues with like just like systemic issues around the paraeducator role that. I was helping students one-on-one with disabilities, and I grew up in special education and grew up with getting para support. But that because I was new, like a lot of that was devalued, and that a lot of people had too much meeting burnout to do meetings, and people would like. I tried to like raise that. We should be working together to like raise one another up. But they'd still default to how, like, oh, this is your role. You're not supposed to do all these things. And just like a lot of like disrespect and like people telling me that like their perspective growing up in special ed isn't important to the job, and that my question is basically how do I go about like persisting in like trying to organize in the workplace, and when there are so many institutional barriers and like disrespect and like lack of inclusion of actual people with disabilities in the field.
Right. While the final comrade asks her question, are we gathering? We're gonna gather and take a big support picture for UAWD. So, big three. Sorry. For big three. Do you want people to like, should we just have them here and we take photos of everybody like at their tables, or I don't know how we get this many people in the shot otherwise.
Take it from here. It should be easy.
Can we instead just give every table a poster and take a picture that way?
Still look cool. Everybody gets to
Okay, yeah, and we are basically at time, so does anybody have like a final thought to sum up? A lot of these questions were about what do you do when it's hard? I think Abby, you said it pretty well before.
What?
Oh, just you gotta keep fighting and stay strong.
It takes time. It takes a really long time. Things don't happen overnight. You can't wait for the immediate revolutionary moment. It takes time, and you have to build relationships. I don't know if you can hear me being very lazy, but yeah, it takes time. And
okay.
It really does, yeah.
Thanks, everybody. We're getting kicked off because we've got to start doing more votes, but thank you so much to our panelists.